It's X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter for the 1995 vehicle releases, the return of Star Wars toys, the 90s versions of the vehicles. I want to take a look at them, talk about them, and what's interesting is they're actually almost just like the originals from the 70s and 80s that I would have missed out as a 90s Star Wars fan. We got the TIE Fighter here first, which is the same molds and such as that original one, except for with the wings. There's a real texture to them. I guess the original was just a sticker, which would have been absolutely awful. We got a complete one here. Now, this is my actual one I had as a kid. Everybody would say these wings and stuff would break on them. Mine are in perfectly fine shape. I don't know what you guys were doing with yours, but perhaps you were violent children. So the feature of the 90s one is going to be the buttons at the top here, pushing them in. Bam! The wings shoot off. Oh, the TIE Fighter got shot down by the Rebel Alliance. And again, I've had this on display for a long time with the wings in. These springs are incredible in the 90s. Still works and holds the wings just fine. I think things were getting broken as this piece will come out of the wing. You can see the tabs are through the hole here to hold it in place. There's really no reason to ever remove them unless you're kind of disassembling it to put away. So I could see messing with that. They're going to get broken. But again, both sides with the textured TIE Fighter solar panels. And of course these are smaller, not as tall as a real scale one would be, but you get the same shape and idea and design without wasting massive amounts of space. So I actually like the toyish versions of vehicles just to save the space, still get that look and functionality of the vehicles. Here are the buttons to launch the springs here. The cockpit with the clear. There's a sticker on the inside for kind of the instruments and such. The opening just has this one little tab and hole here. Opens up just a little seat there. I guess the original one would raise up, maybe making it a little easier to put your figure inside. The 90s one is just set. We do have the 90s pilot figure, which is crazy to look at because we got just like the X-Wing pilot here of just Luke to compare when we get to the X-Wing. But when I put these together, look how much taller the TIE Fighter pilot is. He's like a head taller. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize he was so huge. You can see the seat kind of comes to a point at the end. Makes it a little difficult to get him in there. You gotta kind of start in the back, set him in. Don't gotta squeeze or do anything, he'll just kind of squeeze in there as you get it, but his head is very close to the top because he's so tall. He's like freakishly tall. He's like Conan O'Brien tall. But with the domed top, it doesn't hit the head at least, still locks in place. Even with these slits here at the top, it's supposed to let in some light, but I can really hardly see the pilot in there unless you really look. So nice try, but that doesn't really offer too much. But it was always awesome that you could put a figure inside. Kids absolutely love that. I don't really keep the pilot inside there because, again, you can't see him very well. He's just better with all the other troops on my shelf. So apparently the original one, this back thing was like holding the batteries because it was electronic. I always wondered about this thing because it always looked very suspicious as a kid, but I didn't know anything about the original Star Wars toys. So it had batteries, and this bulb right here was actually a light. So it lit up with a little red light. But it also had a motor in it, so that made the sound, wasn't like an electronic sound of like a sound effect playing off a chip or anything. It was just like a motor grinding, like I don't know what, if it was supposed to be a laser or if it was supposed to be the jet engine sound. I don't know. Not too sad that that's gone, but again, they probably would have had like a chip, like the TIE Fighter screech, which would have been really awesome. You have the battery spot right here ready. Did not opt for that. So the only feature is the shooting wings, getting shot down. You can kind of put them back in, pretend you had like multiple TIE Fighters. Still pretty fun, you know. Luke or Han shooting them all down. The color is this little bit of blue tint to it, which kind of makes you think of like the way they looked in Return of the Jedi. They were really supposed to be blue there, if it was just kind of a coloring, lighting issue. They kind of went in between there. It's kind of like, it is blue tinted, but it's pretty light. And the first wave is supposed to be all A New Hope stuff. A little strange there with the coloring that they didn't just go with the kind of gray or white color. I still like that it was very different than the X-Wing coloring. Very clear difference with the Imperial colors and design. It was an awesome one, and I like that I kept good care of it as a kid. Still use it in my display just as a little TIE fighter. We have the X-Wing fighter. A lot of sticker decals for its detail, unlike the TIE fighter that was just all molding. But even those, a lot of them stayed on there pretty well despite me playing with this a lot as a kid, again in my childhood. X-Wing fighter with the landing gear, still good, just kick it out. Again, a smaller size than what it would be, but still fits the figure inside. I always lift here to pull out. This is supposed to be some kind of button to push, but I feel like the mechanism's going to bust because when it locks down in there, it's very tight. So I don't even really recommend that. I just would always pull it up from here, and you're not going to get the broken cockpit that will happen sometimes. This clear piece come out. Just kind of a molded seat in there. There's no like sticker application for like a control panel or computer or anything. Since the Luke figure was so short, he just kind of slides right in there. Might have trouble with the arms a little bit. He sits in there and then he's very visible in his, unlike the TIE Fighter. Even though it's kind of a tinted windshield, still comes through pretty good there. And of course you can put any pilot in there that you wanted. But this one is marked to be Luke's X-Wing specifically. We got like the R2 here, which funny they didn't just make a spot for the real droid, but this is actually a button for the mechanism. Because here we have the closed S-foils. And the R2 dome works as the button mechanism you press to open them up. And this little blue thing back here, pull back to close it back up. And so on the original toy, this was a button right here because underneath here is the battery compartment. And it had the same kind of motor that would just kind of go, but it did have a light somewhere in the front as well. So not any motor screech in there, but the battery compartment is there if you kick up right in here. You might need a wedge. Problem is I don't like opening it very much because this back part isn't really a hinge, it's just kind of bent plastic. So you do that too many times, that's going to come right off. But if you get some batteries in there, when you open the wings, you get a little X-Wing jet engine sound effect going on. And you can just hit that button anytime for the sound effect. Also added is a little button underneath here for another sound. For some laser shooting action. The quad lasers, which do come off. Get them all off there. All mine intact. I got all four still. Again, I took a lot of care of my toy stuff because I wanted to keep all the parts to play with. So those just snap on there. I guess the original ones were like black or weird or something. These are a little more matching color to the ship, which is good. These two are kind of the quintessential ships of the Star Wars saga, at least the original trilogy. They were definitely must-have vehicles, just to kind of play Star Wars in general with the war going on, or spaceship battles. And you could kind of mix it up. If it was multiple TIE fighters, you could kind of switch it up with the X-Wing, pretend it was other X-Wing pilots. Luke Skywalker is maybe more on the ground doing Jedi stuff. So the 90s were kind of my time for discovering Star Wars, and I like to show how a lot of the 90s stuff is still pretty good for your collection even now, and a lot more affordable than later things like the vintage collection, which I do still get and collect and show here as well. So for Star Wars and other 90s action figure stuff here, retro action figures opened up or showing my old collections or things I get new to finish collections, you want to stick around right here. We don't keep it in the box here, we got to rip it open, check it out, and